Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the third day of our conference, of our Gale conference. Hope all is well with everyone so far, and it's been worth the while. My name is Selwyn Rodolfo. I'll be the moderator for this session. It's titled Leveraging NotebookLM for Researchers, subtitled Upload Sources for Focused Inquiry. Before we begin, we have a few reminders. We have a code of conduct, which we all invited to adhere to for this conference. The link for that will be posted in the chat. If you do experience any issues related to conduct or anything else, you feel free to contact us via the email that would also be posted in the chat. Please be sure your microphone is muted. All questions and comments will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Then you can use your Q&A feature and the chat options to pose your questions and your comments. During the Q&A segment, towards the end of the presentation, at the end of the presentation, please wait until you're invited to unmute before asking your questions or making your comments. This session is being recorded and live streamed via YouTube. Captions. You may enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. They are Helene Gold and Sarah Drerup. They are both STEM librarians at the University of Kentucky in the United States of America. Please join me in welcoming Helene and Sarah. Right ahead.
Thank you so much, Selwyn. I really appreciate your kind introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. We are indeed Sarah and myself, Helene, at the University of Kentucky. We are liaisons mainly to engineering and College of Ag, Food and Environment. Next slide, please, Sarah. So our presentation agenda includes a brief overview of why we're using NotebookLM. I had two case studies, one from me and one from Sarah. We'll talk a bit about guidance on ethical use and some other considerations, and then we'll end with discussion and questions. Next slide. So why NotebookLM? So Sarah and I are on the same STEM team, and in our conversations with each other after last year, we both realized that we were using NotebookLM with graduate students in different ways. And it was very interesting to see how versatile it was and how we were both using it. So in our consultations and our work, we've decided to work more closely to see how we can really use it more optimally. The other reason why we use NotebookLM, well, the main reason we're using NotebookLM is because it's a closed corpus tool that uses a trained chatbot, which is Google's Gemini. And of course, NotebookLM is a Google tool as well. So using this AI chatbot helps users interact with their documents, their own documents, in a closed corpus environment through summaries and explanations and a variety of different outputs, which we'll demonstrate for you. But that is probably one of the most unique features of this tool, is that the user can decide what articles, book chapters, videos to use to be able to interact with. Instead of, say, something like ChatGPT that responds from a large language model, this one has its own curated corpus. Users can create an account with either a personal Gmail or an institutional Gmail. We have Google Workspace at our university, so we encourage our students to use that. Also, Google, there's an interesting evolution that's happening with Google Scholar. They're using Gemini as a chat bot layer to search in that way on top of the Google Scholar index. And I've been using it a lot. It's been actually very interesting, and I've been having some fairly good results with it. It's not integrated into NotebookLM at this time, but it feels to me like it's coming that way, especially as we see the Copilot integration with all of the Microsoft productivity tools. I feel that Gemini integration more fully among its workspace apps is on the horizon. So I encourage you all to look at Google Labs and see how that works on the Google Scholar Index. So you can upload so many different file types. You can upload docs and slides and PDFs. You can upload images and have it do an analysis of a chart or a graph. You can upload MP4s, MP3s. It's extraordinarily versatile. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, Sarah Drerup here. I'm going to talk a little bit just about RAG AI, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation. So Helene already said that it's a closed corpus and that you are providing the sources that the large language model is utilizing. So the R is retrieval, meaning that it's searching that known knowledge base. The augmentation is it's taking that information from that known knowledge base and it's updating the model's context window. And then the generation is that Gemini piece where it's using that large language model to analyze the query, the retrieved information to generate a response for you. What this means is that you're getting source-grounded responses. So we're not seeing a lot of hallucinations and citations because you are providing the sources that it's utilizing to answer your question. It's updatable. You can add new sources as you are learning more about your topic or your interests shift. And so you can just update and add new documents and it automatically updates the conversation that you're having with the tool and you don't have to retrain an entirely new model. It's transparent in that we'll see later when we're doing demonstrations that it shows you where it's pulling that information from, which source it's utilizing to answer your question. Something that comes up every instance that I have talked to people about utilizing NotebookLM, and that is copyright and fair use. So NotebookLM does not use uploaded material to train its large language model, Gemini, or its chatbot, its associated chatbot. So if you have legal access to a source through your institution, it is fair use. What I will say, and I caution you, is that the NotebookLM Pro account does allow you to share your chat of your notebook, meaning that it's pulling information from those sources, developing a chat, and you could share that with outside individuals of your institution. And that's where things get a little bit gray and there could be some concerns with copyright. And I'll let Helene lead off with the first case study.
Okay, so I had been working closely with new graduate students in engineering, and many of them are assigned to established research labs at our university, and they conduct highly technical research in very specific areas. So even though our students have strong foundational knowledge in engineering and usually in their specific field, they don't have the advanced expertise to be able to quickly get up to speed and start producing and analyzing data. So they need to get up to speed, they need to develop expertise very, very quickly and often come to us for assistance with that. Next item, Sarah. So our solution, well, my solution, and I had a student who actually very first time I used it recommended, he said, I have a colleague who's using NotebookLM, what about that? And I'm like, oh yeah, this might be the perfect tool. So we're using it to synthesize work published by the faculty lead of the lab, all of the output from the lab. Any other researchers who are affiliated with the research lab, we can create a specialized corpus to be able to engage just with that material for focused study and for developing expertise quickly. And so our objective was to quickly build expertise, not only for the new graduate student to start contributing to the work of the lab, but to also start them thinking about what their own focus of research will be for completing the dissertation or thesis, and especially for conference presentations and publications, which are often expected before students complete their graduate level degree. So there's a lot of pressure for students to build expertise very, very quickly. And this tool has been incredibly helpful for that. So what I do with my students at the very beginning is to help them identify the corpus. A lot of our students aren't familiar with searching databases or faculty profiles or scholarly profiles. So the first thing we do is look at Web of Science researcher profiles. We look at ORCID profiles to identify current CVs, current lists of publications, and basically get a full picture of that research output from the lab. Then, of course, we use databases, both broad like Web of Science, or in my case, Compendex for engineering, sometimes highly specific like IEEE or maybe ACM for computer science, to then download those PDFs, download that material for the corpus. I also encourage students to identify textbooks that are available either to them or open access textbooks. There are so many more OER materials in engineering, to identify technical reports, gray literature, any other supporting materials. It might even be a lecture that the lead researcher of the lab gave and is on YouTube. It might be an interview the researcher has done. It might be a blog. Many of our lead faculty and researchers have their own independent websites with other material. All of that can be ingested into the NotebookLM corpus. So what I'm going to show you next, I'm going to do a demonstration. I'm going to show you what a brand new notebook looks like, what it looks like with sources, how to chat with those sources, how to create an audio overview where you can listen and interact with a podcast style summary, and how to create a report, very specific style of a report. So I'm going to have you stop sharing and I'm going to start sharing. Okay. And it looks like you can now see my, my window. So this is basically what an empty new notebook looks like. The first thing that you're prompted to do is add sources. And it gives you two options to add sources. Here, you can drop your files. Let me see. Oops, sorry. I'm having issues with the Zoom bar on my screen, so I want to make sure you can see this okay. You can search for sources on the web using Gemini, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend it for our graduate students. I generally don't recommend using this to locate sources. Or here, you can upload files, and you'll see all the file types that are supported. You'll see you can add URLs to YouTube videos. Because this is a Google product, it integrates with Google Drive. You can also add from Google Drive here, or you can copy and paste text and add it to this area. Once you add your sources, they will appear here on the left pane. The middle pane of the window is where the chat will take place, and you can save those chats. And the right pane is the studio. This is where you can choose any number of outputs from NotebookLM, including the podcast audio overview. You can create flashcards, reports, infographics. Sarah is going to show you some of this as well. So this is what it looks like upon landing. So I'm going to show you a notebook that I created for working with a group who's working in nanomanufacturing and biofilm prevention. And you'll see all of my sources are here. By default, when you add your sources, they're all selected, and the chat automatically creates an overview summary of all of your sources. When you add sources, it updates the summary. So what you can do is you can, before I get to actual chatting, you can designate how your chat is configured. Here, you can put it in learning mode, where students sometimes use this as a study tool, or, and this is how I recommend using it with the graduate students and researchers I work with. When you click custom, you can tell it, customize the style for a PhD student. Or maybe you can customize it for a role-playing game host who has a PhD, right? So you can be very specific. Like all AI, the more specific your prompting and the more specific you are in giving it a role, the better the output will be. So here is my summary. And you'll see I've asked it a question of how do the Z nanocapsules selectively target pathogenic oral bacteria? And it provides me with a response. One of the things that's really important is that it shows you where it's pulling from. Not only does it show you the source that it's pulling from, it shows you where within the source it's pulling from. So if you are needing to verify the output, you can easily see where the source is coming from and how it's making those connections. And I find that transparency really reassuring in the world of using these kind of tools for the level of research that some of our students and our faculty are doing. Every time you generate a response in this pane, you can save it. So everything can be saved and it will appear in the saved list below the studio. So here is this one. You can then you can convert it back to a source, which I don't know how I feel about that. It feels like making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy to feed back into the corpus. Most students export it to a Google Doc so they can work with it later. So this is the chat feature. This is basically how chat works. You can chat with all of your sources. You can select which sources to work with. There's a lot of flexibility. The next thing I want to show you is the audio overview. Here you can designate the format. It can be a lengthy deep dive. It can be brief. It can be a critique. It can be a debate. The length, the language. NotebookLM supports, I think, about 70 languages, both with documents and output, which is fantastic. It's showing me how many sources it's going to work with. And here again, you can prompt it specifically to focus on certain aspects, and Sarah will talk about this, methodologies that were chosen, certain applications. So folks can be very, very specific in how they generate an audio overview. Takes about 20 or 30 minutes to generate one of these. And I'm going to use one that I've used in the past. Before I play this, I want to warn you, this is a very, very cheeky, breezy, casual podcast style audio overview. It sounds like two podcast hosts discussing something. If you're walking your dog, if you're driving your car, this is perfect to be able to maybe ingest at a first run a scholarly article, a study, a book chapter, and then go back and actually read it and interact with it. So it gives you that opportunity. So I'm going to play it so you can hear how easy and breezy our hosts are.
The sound is not working, Helene.
I know. Of course it's not. Hold on, let me see if I can back it up. It was working like 5 minutes ago. Hold on. I'm going to back it up a little bit and see. I am so sorry. That is so frustrating. Let me see if I can get it to work in interactive mode.
Imagine trying to like securely pack a dozen hot dogs into a cardboard tray that's designed to hold coffee cups.
Yeah, that's just a mess waiting to happen.
Right. It wouldn't work at all. The hot dogs would just wobble. They'd slide across the circular rims. And the moment you tilted...
So it's giving an...
Imagine trying to like securely...
So it's giving an example of how biofilms don't stick to something. And apparently it's using the metaphor of hot dogs sliding around, which is weird. So I'm glad that the interactive mode is working, because what you can also do is you can interact with the podcast. You can talk to it and you can chat with it and then save that output.
Pack a dozen hot dogs into a cardboard...
Oh, wait. Someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
So you get the idea. Oh, let me go ahead and stop that because I do not want to keep chatting with the host. So you get the idea of how casual that is and how casual that can be. Okay, the final output that I'd like to demonstrate are reports. So one of the things that I like about this is you can see it thinking about generating types of reports that are appropriate for the content of my corpus. By default, it'll let you create your own. And again, you can prompt it very specifically of the style that you want. You can create a briefing doc, and you'll see just now it generated ideas based on the corpus for a technology development plan, validation research report, spatial interaction guide. It is highly specific and very, very useful. And when you create these reports, again, they are here. You can convert them back to sources. You can export them. I'll open this up so you can see what they look like. You can have it formatted in different ways, but it's very, very useful. And I do encourage students to prompt it very, very specifically. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, Sarah, and pop this back to you.
Okay, just checking, yes. So I'm going to be talking about another case study. So in this instance, I have helped several graduate students who were trying to narrow down their methodology. I've worked with graduate students talking about birds and frogs and how they were going to collect data on those different species. And for that, I decided to create an example today using acid mine drainage. So acid mine drainage literature, it's a mixture of complex chemistry, hydrology, engineering research, and understanding why a researcher chose a specific remediation methodology, whether it's active or passive or bioremediation, can be buried under a lot of data. So a solution to come up with that, to fix that problem, is using NotebookLM to create kind of a research hub, right? Where the AI is acting as a specialist and it's analyzing all of these articles to figure out the methodology so that I can figure out my own methodology. And so the objective is moving from being completely overwhelmed by all of these remediation types and data to understanding the logic of why you might choose a certain study method. So one of the things in talking to the graduate students is making sure that they're kind of asking the right questions. So we talk about prompt generation and all those things. So 3 different kinds of prompts that I find myself talking to graduate students about is first the comparative prompt. So if they're trying to figure out between 2 different studies, what are the different water quality sampling protocols that they use? And of those, which one has more accurately accounts for seasonal flow fluctuations? And you could do that across like 4 different research studies. Maybe the jargon buster prompt, maybe I had never heard of microbial fuel cells, and I just want that explained to me at my level, meaning, I could ask it, please explain the concept of microbial fuel cells within these sources as if I were a junior environmental consultant, or as if I were a PhD student, or whatever it may be. And then the extracting logic prompt. So identify why you might choose one methodology over another. Why would I use this dispersed alkaline substrate methodology over an anoxic limestone drain? And it's going to tell me environmental variables, flow rates, funding. It's going to give me all of the parameters to help me make a decision if I'm looking to implement a certain remediation type. So in addition, Helene showed some aspects of NotebookLM, some tools that I utilize with graduate students, but here are a couple more that can also be utilized. So a video overview, generating an animated video to learn more about a concept or the sources, and then a data table, which generates a data table from all of the sources that you are providing. And I'm going to show examples of those. So this is my NotebookLM page. Again, you can collapse the source panel, which I'm doing for your viewing pleasure here today. But you can see that I do have a good number of sources, and these are all sources that contain different kinds of acid mine drainage remediation types. You can see that my chat panel, I've asked it multiple questions. And again, Helene covered this, but when you ask it questions, you can save these as different notes. So when I was talking about, the comparative analysis of hydrological sampling protocols and seasonal variability. When I click on that, you can see that it has made a note off of my question that I asked. And in this case, if I scroll over to the left-hand side, you can see, I had it on there, compare the water quality sampling protocols in source 3 versus source 4, which methodology accounts more accurately for seasonal flow fluctuations. And, it does a really good breakdown of the two different sources. It's telling me where in the source it found each of those pieces of information, and then it analyzes the accounting for seasonal flow fluctuations. Again, this is just two source types that I asked it to analyze, but you could do multiple. And I can just click to save note, and it makes this wonderful note that then I can download. When we ask those other questions of explaining the concept as if I were a junior environmental consultant, and then also the last one of extracting logic, identifying the rationale of why we would choose one methodology over another. Coming back over to my studio, so Helene had mentioned how the podcast has, a very jovial nature. It's like a podcaster. You can create a video, which, supports auditory visual learners as well. I'm one that I can read a paper over and over again, but if I see a video of it or if I listen to a podcast, that cements in my brain really quickly. So this is something that's helpful for my personal learning type. Actually, let me show you first. When you click on the video overview, again, you get all of these options. Explainer, if you just want a short video. So the explainer, most of the time when I utilize that, I'm getting videos that are like 8 or 9 minutes long. The short are just 2 or 3 minutes. This is also something that faculty members, if they wanted to create a short video and they really wanted to control what's in the video as far as what sources it's drawing from, rather than just using videos on YouTube that they find, they can create their own video. You can choose what kind of visual style you want, and then you can also add the custom topic of what you want it to talk about. So here you can see that you can view the prompt and the sources. I'm using all of my sources, and I just asked it to focus on remediation methods that targets the removal of iron specifically. When I click on that, I'm just going to have it jump ahead to get past the intro.
This iron drastically drops the water's pH even further, making the whole environment incredibly hostile to life. Moving on to Section 2, the toxic sludge trap, when cures become problems. For decades,
So you can see that it makes you a nice little animated video that talks about the concept or the topic. Additionally, something that I find very useful that NotebookLM can do, I'm just going to widen this part, is create a data table from all of your sources. So you see when I do that, it's pulling information from all 28 sources, and it's giving me a really wonderful data table on the remediation technology, the process category, active, passive, materials or reagents used, the primary mechanisms, the target pollutants, the advantages, the disadvantages, and all of the sources that it's pulling that information from. You can export this to a Google Sheet, which then you can download into an Excel sheet. And so this is also just something that if you were putting a lot of information into that, a lot of sources, it can very quickly make a nice little data table. Just if you wanted to do a quick analysis, let's say, I'm just trying to figure out the different kinds of active remediation types and what kind of minerals it's removing from the water. You'd very quickly be able to analyze that using this data table. Okay, and then we would be doing a disservice if we didn't quickly talk about guidance on ethical use in university policies. So as it stands now, we do have UK Advance, and our 2025 guidelines kind of state that it's pretty generic in the sense that they say that it's discipline appropriate, which is also fair. So we always encourage graduate students to understand their department policies on AI usage, their faculty advisors or their lab leaders' expectation for AI use, and then also kind of steering that conversation in a very big way is publisher guidance. So if they're working on a project that is eventually going to be submitted for publication, they need to make sure that they aren't using AI in a way that is not allowed by the publisher. They also need to make sure from the start that they're disclosing their AI use in the way that either the publisher or a faculty advisor or the department recommends that they do so. And then I'll pass it to Helene for considerations for use.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. So we're going to end by having a bit of a discussion about these considerations. So like with every AI tool, we say this all the time, validate results, outputs, and citations. Even though this is far less prone to hallucination, it still needs to be verified, especially for, well, for anybody, but I was going to say especially for researchers working at this level, because their subject expert faculty will ding them immediately if they make any sort of spurious correlations. So the free version has limited capabilities and the beta features come and go. Every time Sarah and I do a workshop or work with faculty and students, we see a new feature or we see something disappear. So the pro version does have more capacity and how many documents you can add to a notebook. The free one is 50 documents per notebook. The paid ones are more, there's more features, there's more functionality. The free version, sometimes it's not unpredictable, but sometimes the features will come and go. This is probably the most important thing that I will mention about using NotebookLM is that the RAG model does not search the entire notebook. But what it does is it looks at the text for similarities and connections between your prompt and the text of the input, right? It plays a very, very sophisticated matching game, and it's looking for where your prompt matches in the text of the notebook. And the problem with that is it struggles tremendously with complexity. So you can like group themes based on keyword similarities. It will do that. But if you ask it for like larger conceptual connections, if you prompt it to make more sweeping, universal, thematic connections, it really does struggle in that way. It's really good at pulling material from your notebook. And I think Sarah's examples are perfect when it comes to methodology and specific aspects of that methodology, specific remediation, specific elements. For larger usage, it really does struggle with more complex connections among ideas. Before I end, I should have said this at the beginning, and I'm going to say it now. Sarah and I watched Lucy Gray's NotebookLM webinar program on Monday, and it was excellent because she uses this tool in the public library setting to do staff training and to use like strategic planning documents to inform her work. We were just so blown away by how innovative and interesting that was. So NotebookLM has a wide variety of uses in different contexts. So I really do want to give her a shout out for that very cool presentation. Thank you all so much. And Selwyn, we are now happy to take questions.
Yes.
Comments.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation. From the comments we've been hearing so far, persons are quite pleased with what has been shared. So some of the questions, I would look at the first one. Does NotebookLM integrate with citation managers like Zotero? Or is the only option to upload documents manually?
You know, it's funny. I was just reading about this and someone else had asked if it integrates with Zotero, and I believe it does. And I meant to play around with it and then I didn't. Sarah, have you done that?
I have not. I apologize.
Oh, I knew there was something I wanted to do before this, but
Yeah.
you know,
And so I'll also say I can think of two instances off the top of my head where two graduate students were trying to figure out methodology, draw some connections, and they had literally just been given a jump drive with research articles in it from their faculty advisor or one of their one of the research assistants in the lab, and they were like, I don't know what all, like, this is 45 articles and I don't know how these all come together or what the synthesis of all of this research is, and reading 45 articles and drawing those conclusions are challenging. And so this was something that they could just upload, that jump drive, all those articles from jump drive into NotebookLM and be able to make some of those connections. So that was very helpful, but I have not played with it from pulling from a citation manager.
Yeah, I mean, when I meet with students, they're not using citation managers. So the first thing we do is drag and drop that entire download folder that they've amassed mainly on Google Scholar into Zotero. We look at Zotero and then we drag it all into NotebookLM. I'm not sure, and I have meant to look into that more carefully. Thank you for that question, because now I will absolutely looking at, I'm sure I could do a quick Google search, and maybe one of you are already doing that. And if you are, I will take a
Yeah.
look for it
And I
next
just
time.
saw Annalise, thank you so much for providing your comment. She did say, they said there's a Zotero plugin for
Yeah.
NotebookLM, and you can also drag and drop the PDFs from Zotero directly into Google Drive or NotebookLM. And she figured that out so you can. But thank you for sharing the knowledge you learned this weekend. We appreciate you.
Yay. See, look at us learning together.
Yeah.
Great. From a quick comment as regards to slides, would you be sharing your slides? Or have they been shared? The
Yes.
resource. Okay, great. Second question, does the analogy the AI used come from the sources directly, or did it generate it on its own?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So Gemini is the trained model that sort of is on top of the sources, right? So Google has its own large language model that it uses to train the chatbot, the Gemini chatbot. And then Gemini interacts only with the sources you put into NotebookLM. So it's not pulling in from another large language model for content, if I understand the question.
The person who posed the question, would you like to clarify or go right ahead? Can open your mic. Eric Helton, is it you who posed the question?
Oh. Someone in the comments
Yes.
made the question, they might have been referring to the hot dog analogy for biofilms.
Yeah,
Oh.
so ridiculous. I actually am glad that I accidentally landed on that portion of the podcast, because I originally had it set up to have a few serious comments and then followed up by a weird analogy. So yeah, that's how the Gemini model is sort of trained to like take on the persona. Like when you tell Chat GPT to take on a role of like a financial advisor or a realtor or a therapist, this chat bot has already been
Okay.
trained to take on that role of a breezy, casual, fun podcaster. And so you get these ridiculous analogies, and I mean, they're not ridiculous, but they are kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Good, great. So let's go on to the next question. Which outputs require the most energy to generate? I've heard that audio and video take a lot of energy to create. How should we navigate the environmental impacts of these tools?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Sarah?
So one, absolutely correct. Video and audio do take the most energy to generate. And that is something that I don't ever, I am not a pusher in that I'm trying to push zone students. Especially I work with agriculture, food, and environmental students. And so that conversation comes up constantly about the environmental impacts of using artificial intelligence. And because of that, some faculty and some students are not using it, and that is absolutely justified. And then some equate its use to other tools that we're already using that aren't necessarily large language models and things like that. And so they are using it, but it is something that students are not shy. If I would say you're struggling with this issue, we do have a institutional subscription to this AI tool that can be helpful for that. And if they say I'm not using AI for environmental reasons, then we're not using AI for environmental reasons. And we talk about, the way that we're quickly drawing those important points from research articles and how we can scan them and pick out the important pieces and then do that analysis the old school way, right? I am never pushing a student to use artificial intelligence, and I have been so impressed and just thankful that that conversation is happening in most of the departments that I work with. And so when I am proposing using an AI tool, the student is already either have decided that I am using AI or I'm not using AI, and for whatever ethical reason they see fit. So that conversation happens a lot.
And I think that that's unique to your subject area. And I'll say I have the opposite experience in the College of Engineering. Students are already using it. They're using it widely, and they want to continue using it. I agree with Sarah. Don't push the audio or video feature, but in our graduate program, more than half of our graduate students are international English language learners. And so for our international students, oftentimes the conversation comes up around like what other tools are available. Especially we talk about Grammarly a lot and how to use it, how not to use it. I've taught a workshop, a brief workshop on Grammarly. But I do offer it to English language learners who want another platform to engage with the material. And sometimes having those brief audio overviews that can be customized are a great supplement to the incredibly dense, technical, high-level research that they're being given by their faculty. But I don't highlight it and I don't offer it up, but there are some uses where there's sometimes when it makes sense for me to offer it.
Good. So a question which can maybe deemed a follow-up question: how accessible are the videos and podcasts created using NotebookLM?
So the nice thing about the audio, I don't think it does it in the tool, but they can all be downloaded and then they can all be made available for closed captioning. So all of them are downloaded as MP3s and MP4s. Oh, did I freeze? Oh, I'm back. So they can all be downloaded as MP3s and MP4s, and then they can be have accessibility tools. They can have accessibility features. I don't think it's available in the tool. Is it, Sarah?
I am not certain. I apologize.
I encourage folks to download the output.
Yes. So we do have a number of questions coming at us. And someone invites you both, if you'll be willing to share your email addresses, so further questions may be posed to you directly, especially if you don't get through all. So I go on. One of the top questions I get from graduate students conducting literature reviews is for assistance with the synthesis step. Do you think the data table feature in NotebookLM could help with constructing a synthesis matrix?
I mean, I do. I see you nodding your head, Helene. That is where my only concern at all was when Helene was talking about the complexity piece. That would just be something that it may not be at the exact level that you're looking for, but I think as a starting point, 100%. And I don't know if you agree or disagree, Helene, but
I think because I've talked to faculty about this, and the faculty and the lab leads who I've talked to dislike NotebookLM very much for their own use, because they're already the subject matter expert. They're already doing the synthesis and the data extraction and the analysis and publication. So they don't see a use for it. And I've talked to them, like for early incoming students, there is absolutely a place for this, but they have to be careful because they might not have enough subject matter expertise to be able to identify those kind of like spurious correlations or some of those like more superficial kind of connections that NotebookLM perceives that further into the literature might have been disproven. So if depending on the age of the material in the corpus, there could easily have been research that supersedes what they've added. This has come up when I work with our students in biomedical engineering, And I have a lab group I'm supporting right now who's doing tissue engineering and tissue modeling, and it is developing at such a rapid pace that as they use this, I keep telling them to remove items from their corpus and replace it with new emerging technology as often as they can. So it depends on how far along the student is, how much subject expertise they have, and also the field in which they're working. Because some are moving more rapidly than others.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of this presentation time. So thank you, Helen and Sarah, for such a wonderful presentation. You've carried us into some depths, deep depths into the use of NotebookLM. So folks, anyone with further questions, not all the questions have been answered, feel free to interact with our presenters via our email. Know that this presentation has been recorded and you can access it in the future. Okay, so see you all at another session. We begin in next, we have 13 minutes before the other sets of presentations at 2 p.m. time. So thank you so much, Helen and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.